Hello, soulmates. You're now listening to Peppersoup stories meant to soothe the souls of women everywhere.
Welcome, welcome. Let's get started. We're in the Peppersoup room. Okay. Over to you, Jay.
Okay, cool. So we're going to just start with our tagline, and our tagline for Trinia is Jimi, if life gives you pepper, make pepper soup. Hello, soulmates. Your hosts are Ejime Okoje, Coach J.
And Patrinia Naha, often called Coach P. Welcome to your soul space. And you are now listening to Peppersoup for the woman of color. We're here to soothe the souls of women of color. And we know sometimes we need some soothing, don't we? Whether you're joining us during your daily commute, cozying up at home, or taking a leisurely stroll, this podcast is your companion for all things thought-provoking, heartwarming. Our mission is just to bring your stories and your insights through storytelling, sharing strategies, and real-life practical ways to turn peppery circumstances that burn your eyes at first to flavorful, soothing pepper soup. It's all about reframing adversity into advantage. And we're bringing on guests who have mastered reframing adversity. And we want you to be able to see yourself in our guests, even see yourself in the stories that Coach Jay and I share. Because in community, right? In community, we can take more risk, we can share, we can grow together, and we go further when we work together. So that's what we're looking to do. So if you're ready to embark on the journey of self and soul discovery, inspiration, and maybe a few laughs along the way, you're in the right place.
Yep. So before we dive in, a heartfelt thank you to our incredible community of listeners. Your support really fuels our passion, and we love hearing from you. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave a review and connect with us on social media. And so we're going to jump straight in. And without further ado, let's dive into today's episode of Peppersoup for the Soul. And we'll be talking about workplace trauma. So sit back, relax, and let the exploration begin. Enjoy the podcast. Coach B.
All right. Hi, Jimmy. So nice
Hello.
to finally. Yes, hi there. It's so nice to finally have you.
It is. Thank you for having me, Coach P, Coach J. I'm really excited to be here.
All right. We want to thank you for, we had to modify the schedule, and you've been so gracious in working with us. So what I would say is the warranty wore out on my hip. So we had to do a trade-in, and it kind of threw us behind. But it was just an adversity, and now we're keeping on climbing. So I want to just introduce you just a little bit to our soulmates, and then please add anything that you'd like to add that you think we should know. You and I met, I was trying to figure out what year was it?
Well, we're both 18 at the time, so probably 2 years
There you go. 18 again and again.
It was 2 years ago, that summer we turned 18.
Yes.
I think it was either 2014, 2015.
Wow, time passes. And I think one of the lessons that I learned even from our relationship is, it's wonderful to make connections. And when you meet genuine people, when you meet people who serve from their heart, you always come back to them. And you just never know how your paths are going to cross again. So Jimi Okubanjo, we actually met it working together in Nigeria at Shell, and we just found that we had common interests, and we found ourselves mixing in the same circle and loving on Paula. You remember Paula? Yes, we'll have to reach out to her again. But the wonderful thing about these connections that we have, and why our reach is for women of color, is that we're in the African diaspora. You're now in the UK. I'm now in the US. Paula is somewhere in Texas, I think, but we all connected there, and we've maintained the connection. So that's beautiful. Jimi Okubanjo delivered transformations in 14 countries and 4 continents with over 200 leaders so far, right? So far. Jimi produced a documentary called Arise Firebird due to her deep multi-industry experience and her firsthand knowledge of what senior and experienced female women of color, female leaders of color, often face in the workplace. So Jimi, anything you want to add to that?
I think so. I mean, now maybe I'm going to give away what I'm doing now, but one of the things I worked in management consulting. So in addition to brands like Amazon, I've worked for or consulted for or employed by people like Amazon, Siemens, you mentioned Shell, a lot of engineering, heavy engineering STEM spaces. I'm a McKinsey survivor. Okay. And I use that word deliberately with no sarcasm. I did survive McKinsey. But it also finds, even with the work I'm doing now, which I'm sure you're planning to unveil what that big mystery of my work is now, I still do a lot of my work now in STEM. So we do an incredible amount of work in pharmaceuticals, a lot of work in tech and engineering. You might hear my associate producer giving me some notes in the background or not. So in case you do.
We welcome him. We welcome him.
So I still do a lot of the conversations I have are back in STEM. So having done this, for me, this life-changing artistic project, it has brought art back into the STEM field.
Okay. So as we go through some of the questions, we'll be doing a little more unveiling, but I will just snatch the Band-Aid off quickly that our topic is workplace trauma. And often, why are we even talking about this, right? Because studies are showing that it's a high percentage of women of color are seeking to leave the workplace within 2 years, either to start their own business or they just had enough. So I want you to first just define what is workplace trauma. We heard about domestic abuse, sexual abuse, all of these things, but what is workplace trauma?
So before I define it, I want to make a very big disclaimer here. I'm not a psychiatrist, and I think that we need to definitely lean on them for those conversations. But trauma is a powerful emotional response to distressing events. And in the case of workplace trauma, distressing events that happen are tied to the workplace, like bullying, exclusion, sexual harassment, physical assault. And it affects our mind, our body, and our behavior. And it can lead to heart disease, like heart attacks, as well as the more common illnesses, diabetes, hypertension, strokes.
Wow.
So when we talk about trauma in the workplace, it's sometimes we use like stress interchangeably or anxiety. And a lot of them there's a lot of overlap, but trauma, specifically when I'm talking about that, it can become PTSD. So I know women who have been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder from their work experience. It's being in that space where one, considers taking one's life as a solution to the workspace because the way we think is different. Asking someone who is suffering from acute, who may have trauma, who definitely is going under extreme mental distress and despair, why don't you just speak out and get help? Well, that's assuming that's to someone who is not he's not going through acute distress and despair, because someone in that space, they may not be able to see exit and getting help as an option. They may not even see resigning as an option. I met a woman a while ago in the course of the work I do, my movie, and her story wasn't featured in the film, but she shared with me that she had actually attempted suicide because of what was going on at work. And she was interrupted partway through, which is why she survived. Not because it was like a member of her family came home and interrupted her. They came home uninvited. unexpectedly and interrupted her act. So when we're talking about that, we're talking about that. It's not as extreme. I wish I could say that's an extreme experience, but it's not that extreme. A lot of women end up fantasizing about it, planning, so they're in that space. And it's just like a normal process of believing or knowing, having this knowing that the world would be better if they weren't here.
Wow.
And for them to now think of a
That's
way
powerful.
to improve the world and make their family happier by leading. So this is what we're talking about in terms of, people could be on this journey because of how they are, because of what's been going on, sometimes over weeks, over months, in my case, over decades in the workplace.
What's your story? Tell us your story and your experience, and really what prompted you to go on this journey where you're doing these artistic creations and creating award-winning. She's won at least, you've won what, 2 awards so far?
Yes.
So far, right?
So far.
On this journey of telling stories and lifting people as you share the stories. What is your story?
So the short version. So I've worked for 20 plus years in operations management and management consulting. And my job was to go into, heavy engineering organizations and help them deliver their work more efficiently, get their projects done on time, keep the plant running, and I worked with teams, and I eventually became a project manager and a program director and all that fun stuff. And I love the work I did. I really go into these complicated spaces and help them see the complexity of their organizations and their processes, and help them actually not just change the process, but also change how processes were managed. And that was why I ended up in 14 countries and 4 continents and with so many technical leaders.
Okay.
One of the things that I began to notice, but it wasn't unusual, I just noticed that I was almost always anxious and nervous at work. I had to either be all on or something was slipping. I had to push harder, and it was okay. I was prepared to push harder, be smiley. I constantly being disappointed. No matter what I did, my work was not good enough, but I couldn't identify the difference between the people who were getting promoted and getting opportunities from me, because they couldn't bring any evidence except for this person. These people would never have you as their manager. And the person, for example, who they said that had made remarks that I act like a typical Black woman. And that person, because I would manage him, they didn't think I could ever be promoted. And I was in my early 20s then. And, now it's like, having taken a break, like, I know what I would do now, but you're in it. And I was alone. I wasn't part of any women's network, any Black networks. I wasn't even aware that was a thing I could be part of. And so I just buckled down and worked harder. I remember going online. I was in England then looking for Black networks, and they were not led by people who looked like me. And there really was no space to even come in and be part of an event. It's like you had to prove you were a manager to even be considered. And I was managing at the peak in my role, 200 people, and still didn't feel qualified to be in this particular network.
Wow.
So
makes you, I'm sorry. Those situations can really make you question yourself.
I would go home from work. I'd cry a lot coming home from work. And that was normal, just crying as I walked home from work. Wow. So what shifted? So I eventually got a job I left that and went into management consulting. And again, that was the first time I actually enjoyed the work. It was just fun. There was still a lot of that garbage around. There were racist jokes, N-word jokes, but it was still markedly better than where I had been before.
I think you also told me that someone made a comment once saying, we could have hired a white man.
Oh, that's later on in my story. He just jumped to the end of the story. No, it's okay. It's okay. So but basically fast forward that, I just knew I just had to work harder. I think I was sick a lot, unhappy a lot, really treated badly. And I just thought somehow if I could just kind of look at the situation, reassess, maybe be less aggressive, in quotes, less assertive, laugh more at their jokes. By less aggressive, what that means, don't tell them what to do.
Wow.
Hint, hint, even though they report to me, hint, 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 hint. Hint, 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 and then tell my boss, tell them what to do.
Can you imagine? I mean, and I actually can't imagine because I know I can relate to the experiences that you're sharing. And I know that my partner, Jay, has had some experiences where it's like this assault in the workplace. And I'm hoping that she would share as well, because I remember early in my career as an engineer, every Monday I would come with ideas in our engineering meeting. I was one of 200. Everybody else were white men. And I was always told my ideas were no good, no good, no good. So I had a good relationship with the woman that I work with, and I started feeding my ideas through him. And when they were coming out of his mouth, all of a sudden they were wonderful ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Can you imagine how that makes you feel when
I don't need to imagine.
Exactly. We don't need to imagine. So for many of us, these have been, experiences that it's almost like cumulative trauma. When you're in a car accident and your arm gets cut off, you can physically see it. But when you're in carpal tunnel each day, it's just a little hit, another hit, another hit. After a while, your body is absorbing all of this trauma. And I love the examples that you gave, because there are probably a lot of us that have experienced, why am I always going to the doctor? Why do I always have some type of sneeze or some type of not feeling like myself? Is it mental? Is it physical? I don't know, Jay, if you can add some experiences here as an HR professional.
I would like to, but I would like Jimmy to finish her story, then I would jump right.
Okay.
So I think in terms of that, so in terms of getting sick, and to understand, talk about, having panic attacks, going to the emergency room, having blood trends, there's a lot of stuff. It wasn't, plus the colds and sniffs and that, but it was not, I think what I learned was that it was always my fault. Because when those things happened and I said anything, it was made clear consistently, it was my fault. It was always 100% my fault. And even with I would say with the exception of probably 2 managers in my career, even the other ones who were good, it was my fault. And I left, and I ended up coming to work working in Shell. And the difference with Shell was, and I'm sure they'll let me say this to some extent, the treatment was better.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't perfect. But I remember having a conversation with one of the leaders when my work was being challenged, and there was somebody, anyway, my work is being challenged, and really brutally so. It was just ridiculous. And the leader said in the meeting, okay, we've had a year on this. We're doing what Jimmy has done. And that is the end of discussion. I remember that moment because it was the only time in my career a senior leader made a very clear decision that to back up my work, didn't leave it to me to try and persuade them. It was the only time. Mm-hmm. And so to go from that situation and come back to the UK, because I don't think that the treatment when I came back was worse. The reality is, people have been giving me food, and I'm going back now and they're giving me sewage to eat. And I'm used to, I'm used to eating food. I like chicken and fried rice. I'm used to that. And now bringing sewage, because I used to eat sewage before. Yeah, I used to eat sewage before.
Mm.
But I now know what chicken and fried rice tastes like.
Yes, and you want more of it because you deserve it.
Yes, and so it just became even harder to take the abuse, the physical threats, the assaults, the sexual harassment, the diminishing language. I experienced when I left Shell and began to work for another organization. Because of the situation, and without going into details, but I experienced period insecurity for the first time in my professional career. Period. Menstrual cycle, menstrual insecurity.
Oh.
Do you know what it's like? And to be someone who is, I've had multiple blood transfusions, to give you a context how heavy that was. And that happened. So in my 40s, to be at work and I honestly have no recollection of how, I don't even ask me how I got out of that situation. I can't tell you. I have no memory of that. I have none.
Wow. Stress
So,
is something
and
else.
understand, less than a year later, I had to have operations for that issue. So it wasn't like this was a light trickle. This was like Niagara, you know. And I know for those who are listening, it's a bit whatever, but that's part of being a woman in the workplace. That is part of the reality. That was a so fast forward some time later, you know, I had a conversation with somebody and a senior executive, and they said to me, and I covered this in my artistic project. They said to me, in open company, they could have hired a white man to do my job. And that was the final thing. It broke me. They won. The person who said that, they won. They defeated me. You know, whatever prize they give people for those kinds of things, that person definitely should get a prize for that, because they won. And everybody else, the people that, when I was in the Middle East and had that horrible experience in that period, they won. They won. I was defeated, completely defeated. And I left the corporate world, and understand HR was in the loop in all of this. Just so, in case anyone's asking, I just shouldn't have gone to HR. I regret that more than anything. I should have.
Really?
Yeah, I shouldn't have. And I'll be honest, I don't tell anyone what they should do. You know, but I know I can't tell anyone, but I know my experiences, it made it worse for me. I think incredibly worse. Wow. I probably might have actually still stayed in the corporate world had they not been put involved. And so in terms of that, I think for me, I left the corporate world knowing 3 things for sure. Only 3 things.
Okay, 3 things.
I was not skilled or qualified to do anything. I had a life that was not worth living, and I was human garbage. Those were the 3 things I knew when I left the corporate world.
Wow.
So I started on a journey.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did you do, this is like Victimy on the 5th level. So you know how you say Victimy 101? This was like the first year, second year, 20, how many years would you say you went through this?
Over 20 years.
So over 20 years of being a victim.
Understand, I have no shame in the word victim, because without victims, there are no perpetrators. And so, no, I was a victim. I was victimized. I'm a survivor. I am a survivor, but I am a victim. And a lot of those people, yes, I would consider them. In relationship to me, they should see me as their victim. I'm happy with that definition, for them to say, oh yeah, I used to be her employer, and yes, she is one of my victims. That would be a truthful statement, and I'm comfortable with that, because I can be many things. I think that taking the shame around I don't like saying that victim's a bad word, because that's a form of victim blaming. And for people going through trauma, understand, because I went to my pastor, actually, being the good Nigerian girl, and he told me to stop being a victim.
Wow.
I never went back to him again. Never. He didn't help me get out of it. In fact, I had to stop going to church for a couple of years to get better. And then when I got better, I went back, because what he said was not helpful to me. There's no person I've met in this journey that I will tell them, that I will shame them and humiliate them at their lowest. And I'm a survivor of sexual assault, right? No one would come and tell me not to be a victim when I talk about the sexual assault, but they would not say, they want to stop being a victim. It takes as long as it takes to get past that. But I'll be clear, only one of those events made me feel completely dehumanized and worthless, and it wasn't my sexual assault.
You know what, Jimmy? I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Yes.
So what you have said is so powerful, because what I find about victims is that there's a tendency to want to protect the perpetrators out of shame. And I'm so happy that you're very clear that you're a victim, because there's no shame, right? And that's very important, because I think that's one of the biggest constraints when it comes to trauma, because there's that feeling of shame. I don't want it to be said that this happened to me. And it's very big, especially in the Nigerian space, just given the way we are. And I'll talk about that in a little while. But what I wanted to just, first of all, acknowledge is that having gone through these varied experiences over 20 years, I can still feel your energy and the pain and the trauma, because I feel like it still triggers you, and I don't know if that's right or wrong to say, but it's a lot. What you went through is a lot. And the reason why I'm saying this is I've gone through something similar. It wasn't for 20 years, so I'm not comparing. Giving your TED talk, I'm not comparing, but I'm just acknowledging the fact that I actually at some point in time was somewhat suicidal. And the thing about it was, that feeling of shame. I went to the university, I made it 2-1. I'm supposed to be smart, but I'm being called stupid all the time. I can't do anything right. I'm being verbally abused. I'm being screamed at in the office. I lost a lot of self-esteem. It still haunts me up to today. And at that time, I don't even think I spoke to HR. And it's so interesting, because right now I'm in HR, and I've been in HR for about 20 years. So on behalf of the HR profession, I'm deeply sorry for the pain that they caused you at the time during your experience. And ideally, what your story should have been is a different one, a different outcome, especially with HR involved. But I know the HR profession is progressing every day. So I'm hoping that it still doesn't happen. And even if it does, not as much. And we're just generally moving forward. There are a few things you said that I wanted to touch on. Then I have a question for you, Jimmy. So you talked about menstrual insecurity. I wasn't sure if I heard that right. And I've never heard that word before. And the metaphors you've used are so powerful. You said chicken fried rice, comparing chicken fried rice to sewage. I could just see it, when you're used to something different, refreshing, and so on. So help me understand that piece, because we've heard about imposter syndrome, but not heard about menstrual insecurity.
Okay. So,
yeah.
And I apologize for those who are advocates of this if I'm using the wrong language. There's a big movement in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give an example of the issue. We know in some cultures, when young girls have their periods, they don't go to school.
Yes.
That's it. That's an example of menstrual security. So we've got to bring products. How do we help families enable their girls to go to school when they're having their periods? Some schools may not, some societies just may not let girls go out of their home. So anything that kind of stops you from, the way I understand it, living your life as a woman because of your period, and not having that certainty, like you don't know, okay, my period is coming. Am I going to be able to, go to work or that's the idea. And so to have that at 40 something years old working for, I won't say which organization. And that was when I experienced it for the first time.
Wow. Okay.
Because of the circumstances from which I was now in.
Okay. Interesting. Okay,
so
cool.
Thank you. And I would say it was a humiliating experience. It was.
What is the way to get out of that? I mean,
out of what?
Out of the insecurity. You said, is it taking time off? Yeah.
Oh no, mental. Well, what are the basic? Honestly, I kid you not. So I now carry toilet roll everywhere I go.
Whoa.
Years on, like years later, I I went to a 5-star hotel in Chicago recently. I packed my own toilet roll because of that experience.
Trauma is real.
Yeah. So
Trauma
I
is
can
real.
so eventually when the president invites me to the Oval Office to have lunch with her, just so that they know the toilet roll I'm packing is because of that reason.
Wow. Interesting. Okay, so thanks, Jimmy. I mean, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, we started talking about the Nigerian perspective. I think Katrina tried to bring me on to talk about that a little bit. And it's interesting because when we think about Nigeria and the workplace and we think about trauma, it's a very big deal, right? And, the perspective in Nigeria is shaped by so many different factors, multiplicity of factors from cultural, that thing around we're supposedly supposed to have this strong resilience and all of that. We just stick at it and, keep pressing forward. That thing about social, our reputation, and so on. The economic factors are there as well, very compelling. That piece around, I have this job, this is all I have. It's very crazy. Everything is expensive. And I think beyond that, the cultural one is the one that's very significant in the sense that there's this huge power distance in Nigeria. So that feeling of our elders are always right. So if they talk to me this way, then they're right and I'm wrong. And that sense of duty to accept everything they've said as a gospel truth. And knowing that if you are assertive, it could be perceived as being somewhat rude. And trying to find that balance between having a voice, right, and keeping your relationships. What can you say to that?
In regards to workplace trauma.
Yes, and the cultural issues, thinking about Nigeria.
Okay, so I think there's almost two different conversations. Like, how do we talk to our elders as Nigerians?
Yes.
And then workplace trauma. Okay,
connect both.
No, so I know my own expertise, right? So I made a film. So here's what I would do: make a film, expose all your elders, and then have the discussion. Throw the grenade.
I love it.
I'm telling you, because I'll say this in the sense that, and I feel the caveat is, everyone's journey is different, and I don't live in Nigeria right now.
Of course.
And that's not necessarily by accident. So I think in terms of
Okay.
Oh
no, you just said a mouthful.
there's one more joke about it. It's like, to be a friend once told me, she said, to be the adult daughter of a Nigerian father is a full-time job.
It is
a full-time job.
So I'm living it right now too.
So I think that, so let me in two ways: work trauma in Nigeria.
Yeah.
About work trauma in Nigeria. I think I did a documentary about work trauma for people of color in the West. I think that the Nigerian situation is going to be very different. There'll be a lot of different dimensions to it, because we're dealing with, I think, as a nation, we have a lot of shared societal trauma from the economic uncertainty.
Yes.
Also, then adding on the trauma we do not speak about colonialism. Do you know that estimated 60 million Africans died in the colonies? We're not taught that. How many of them were Nigerians? So we have ancestors that were murdered. We know that in the East, they massacred women, evil women who protested against certain policies. So these things were going on. We don't talk about it, but this carried. It carries in the way we treat each other, and then the trauma from the transatlantic slavery over 100 years. Our ancestors, they bought, they sold, they were sold, they hunted, they were hunted, they hid, they searched. Imagine what that was like to live in that time, and to maybe carry all the hats of slave trader, slave catcher, and then potentially slave. And all the things that were going on then, we don't talk about it. And then then the fact we don't even explore, I'm saying they're wild generalizations. And we haven't even started exploring what's our complicity, our relationship with African Americans, with the Afro-Caribbeans in terms of that relationship when some of our ancestors were also sold as well as did the, I mean, so we have that added to the trauma soup that we have, and then all the wars we were fighting with all the other African nations. We were fighting ourselves before the Europeans came. So we have all of this, and the solution has been, let's not talk about it. Let's not talk about it. And yet we see very Nigerian behavior, and that, I think in many ways great, because Nigerians are very, we want to be the best. We want to dominate any space we're in. At the same time, we can see a lot of pain in the sense of a lot of anger, a lot of rage. I see that among, and I have it too, like we have the ability to get incredibly angry with strangers. I see that, and maybe I'm the only one. And so there's something that we just say, well, just don't think about it. Just forgive and forget. Forgive and forget aren't the same thing. You know, I can forgive the fact that your dog jumped out and bit my leg. I don't have to forget there's a crazy dog in your house. You know?
Can I just add a point for something I learned recently, is that the trauma is carried in DNA. Trauma is carried in DNA. And what I mean by that, I was looking at, it was a couple shows on Netflix, and it made me think about in the 1800s, even think about The Woman King, that movie. The fact that you wake up each day and more people in your village are missing. Your child goes out to play and you never see her again. Your husband goes out to hunt, and hundreds of years of that kind of insecurity, of just saying we're being plucked. I know as an African American, when I first came to the continent, there were people who looked down on me as the what did they call us? Akata, the picker, the cotton picker, right? So they were looking down on me. And what I said to them is, I look at myself strongly because I come from the people who survived. And by the way, if you're on the continent, maybe you're part of the people that sold me. So please don't try to make me a victim, when in fact you could be a perpetrator. I am living in victory, honey, not in victimy, okay? So I say all that to say, you have listed a lot of things that we don't talk about. And I love that you're pulling the veil on a lot of discussions. You know, Tyler Perry, you know, makes the point that anything that we keep secret and private, the wound will never heal. There's a time you have to pull the Band-Aid off and give the wound some air so that it can heal. Being covered, you never get to a healthy place. So in all the things you listed, I do want to add a couple, because what I'm seeing in my world right now, I've spent 20 years in Nigeria, and now I'm spending some time in the States. And even when I talk to people about my lifestyle, my girlfriend asked me yesterday, she said, how does your driver and house help, how do they feel about kind of their station in life? So caste system, you know, we think of caste as being Indian, but that colonial hangover and that caste system is very distinct in Nigeria. So let's say if I'm a woman, if I you know, have strong empathy, I put myself in, I'm a woman in the workplace, but I just bring you tea. And if I have a voice or an opinion or how to improve something, when I was working at Shell, I would ask, you know, the workers, what do they think? And you saw many people who just saw that they were in a station. I check my brain at the door. If I bring my brain with me, it may be assaulted. People will see me as stepping above my station or outside of the caste. I don't know if you can relate to that. So as we're talking to women and as we're trying to build an empathy bridge with women, we want to let you know that many of these experiences that you're having, they're not in your head. Just because we're not talking about them as broadly, we're trying to change that right now. Because the assaults, if it was physical and you cut off my arm, you could visibly see it and you would probably run and try to take me to the emergency room. But just like you remember when AIDS and HIV commercials were first out in Nigeria, one of the headlines was, "It does not show on your face." And workplace trauma takes its toll internally. And we often suffer from, oh, we're Black women, we must be strong. I'm Superwoman, I must power through. But inside, we're dying inside. For your menstrual period to be interrupted, or you not even feel comfortable to come to work, it's like, come on, that's the ultimate in attack and trauma.
No,
So I just
Patrina,
wanted to add that.
yeah. I did go to work. So let's think that's where the stuff happened.
Okay.
And I don't know what, and I have no recollection. I don't know I don't know, but it was at work.
Yeah. So
But
I think, assaults come in many ways.
They do. I think,
Mhm.
but I do also want to say is that I think it's important to recognize everyone's journey back is different. There are different paces, different rates. And so one thing we also shouldn't beat ourselves up is if someone's journey back is a bit longer than someone else's journey back. Some people, I know a woman, she didn't go to work for 9 years, and it wasn't because she was rich, that she could stay home and eat bonbons, but she just couldn't. I testified at a state hearing in the US for Massachusetts on workplace abuse.
Wow.
And I'm hearing people speak who've not been back to work in years, and it's not because they're wealthy, or they just can't. They're still so badly injured that it's going to take time. Some people will be able to go back in some capacity. Some may be able to shake it off. You jump off a 2-story building. Some people are going to walk away from that accident. They'll jump out of the window and get up and walk away. Some people will be, you don't know, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen. It's just we all have different recovery routes. I do want to also invite that space around. It was important for me, at least for myself, to give myself the time to come back.
So I do want to flip and kind of transition then, because our podcast really focuses on taking adversity and reframing it into advantage. So my question to you is, how did you go from victimy to victory? Because we see you walking in victory right now with the changes that you're making in the world. So tell us, what was that reframing like for you? How did it happen?
So I still consider myself a victim. That hasn't changed. I think the journey, though, the return to the recovery journey back to health, back to victory, or to victory. I think one of the key things was, if I carry one thing with me, it was the journey of, and it's a process of remembering who I am and remembering whose I am. And that's been a long journey, but it's remembering who I am. And so I ended up going to finding support groups, online support groups. Many of them were free. Many of them, I think most of them were, because I went to a lot of them. And there were days I'd go to 4 or 5 meetings just because I couldn't. I get up by 2, 3, I'd still be in pajamas. A day that I brushed my teeth would be a good day. Crying for weeks. And I come to meetings and I hear people tell their stories. And I'm like, you're lying. Why are you being so weak? And that's me in my pajamas, 3 days past the shower. And it took a while for me to begin to realize that they're telling my story. This has happened to me and it's not my fault. And I still felt so shame. I still felt like somehow this is my fault. Somehow I can just snap out of it and stop being a victim. Just, get back to work and take full responsibility. And it took months. And I finally, for me, it was important to bring in, I'm a person of faith. And so I did go to my church and was quickly disabused of that. But my faith is personal to me. And so I ended up, one of my mentors was a Christian, had the same faith. And so she kind of held space for me in that. And one of the things that helped me was, you know, a question of how would my life be different if I saw God as my employer?
Wow. Say that one more time.
How would my life and my career be different if I accepted that God is my employer? And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of like, if God was my employer. The other questions were questions around, you know, even how I saw my God, my faith. And so being someone who grew up, very, mainstream Nigeria, well, mainstream Lagos church, I realized that there was this notion that, while my God was very, very big and warrior, he wasn't really interested in my day-to-day, in the sense of like that I was deeply unhappy. And the realization that no, that my faith, my God feels my pain alongside me, not sitting outside, feels that pain. And I needed to know that in my faith, I have a God that's rooting for me.
Okay. So seeing God as your employer is what guided you on your 2-year journey to make your film?
It was the support group with a lot of questions like that. Recognize that God is going with me, is rooting, is on my side. Like God is on my side. Not that I am on God's side, which is like, and it's a slight difference, right? But that she is on my side and that she has me no matter what. That helped. But the film, honestly, when I began to think about that led to the question of, so what could I do if I could do anything?
Oh, I love that. What could I do if I could do anything?
And I thought, okay, and then what would I do if I knew I would fail? If I knew that I would fail, what would I do anyway? I'd make a film.
Wow.
And so that was like, so I've got nothing to lose to do it. But I also went on this journey with the openness that I don't know where this journey is going to take me. I didn't even know if I'd finished the film. But that wasn't why I was doing it. I thought just in this moment, there is something to be learned just from the process. So even just preparing to make a film, there is intrinsic value in that process. And if that's my journey, that's fine. If it's raising funds for it and helping someone else produce the film. But ultimately, I was able to let go of the outcome, that it had to be done this way. It had to be this. It had to go to this. And it also meant I could make the film I wanted to make and trust that just making the film I wanted to make was enough, and not trying to think of the film that person wanted or that person wanted or that person wanted. Because that's how I had been before. Like, how do I calculate? I can't calculate anything. So on the journey of, I've probably gone to 4,000 support meetings in the last few years, and I still go. It's not something I stopped doing. I still do those because I still need that support. And I find that being able to trust myself more, to again, remembering who I am, like remembering that I do have instincts, but I've learned in 20 years that they were wrong. And so they're starting to come up again. And I'm starting to, this one is crazy. Like go, take all the chicken out of ShopRite and go and take over and cook. No, that's not good. But beginning to listen to myself and hear God in me.
I must point out, I'm sorry, something you said just touched me, because only is lonely. Being the only one that sees or feels or notices some of those microaggressions, or, it's so lonely sometimes. And so you can begin to feel that maybe I'm the one that's crazy. And that's part of the victimy, because I went through that experience, a workplace experience where it made me doubt myself. It made me wonder, can everybody else be right? And once you stand on that ground, it's difficult to stand firmly anywhere because you're always second guessing and always questioning. So the words that you ask yourself to me are so powerful and empowering to say, what could I do if I could do anything? And what would I do if I knew I would fail? And being able to divorce yourself from the product, but really engage and know that the process would be something that could help heal you.
Or that I would just at least enjoy. You know, this notion of just doing something that makes my heart sing. Could I, you know, let me just do that because it makes my heart sing. And I mean, things I've learned on this journey, or accepted, is, you know, the idea of being excellent at something. I can only truly be excellent at something if it makes my heart sing, because only then can I go above and beyond, because already it's coming from a place of love and joy. But if it's something that I'm good at, I may be great at it technically, but to get to that point of mastery, of true, like uber mastery, if that's even a thing, on something I don't like but I'm good at, that's why people have heart attacks. I mean, that can cause problems. And so recognizing that actually I live my life by what they said, what they thought, and going back to your point about elders, you know, living my life by what they wanted, by them, how they thought, tied me up in knots where I was unhappy. And it's a controversial thing to say, and I apologize. If they're family members and they do love you, they'll want you to be around and be healthy.
Yeah.
And they'll want you to be happy. And here's the crazy thing, right? I used to think Nigerian elders didn't care about that stuff, you know. And I have a friend of mine, he's an older man, he's in his 80s, and he's a minister, very conservative. His father was an Oba, a king. And he was not the heir. He was like a young son of an old father. This is how I can imagine how this is like probably 100 years ago. No, he's not that old, you know. But his father was probably born almost 100 years ago. And he said that when he was taking his exams, which would be the equivalent of, like, I think JSS exams in Nigeria, or going to high school in the US, he fell sick. My friend fell sick. And so his father told him that every time it's time for you to take the exams, you keep falling sick. And he said to his son, and this is again a man born in 18 something, that your mother and I love you, but you don't have to stress yourself so much about academics. Just go and do your best. Do your best, and we will love you no matter what. This is what somebody who was a Yoruba traditional man born in the 1800s. So a lot of the stuff around this elder thing that we're talking about, it's like, I was like, are you sure your father was Nigerian? I'm like, where are you?
Unconditional love without obligation.
You know, and this is a traditional ruler, not even, you know, someone who you think. So I think that maybe there's something we've lost in who we truly are as, you know, Nigerians, for us to feel like, you know, you must do this and sacrifice so much. And here's the crazy thing. I look at people, famous Nigerian women, and I don't know their family circumstances. I can't sit here and tell you. I know nothing about them, but I think of someone like Linda KG. I think of someone like, Chinamanda, a writer, both a blogger and media person. I can imagine Linda. I don't know her. I do not know her. I don't know her family. Cannot speak. But I know for some people's families, to say that you want to be a blogger back then, after finishing school, they're like, hey, when there's bank, when there's
law and doctor.
Exactly. Yeah. When Shell is hiring. So I say this because even back to so I don't know for her, but I know of people in my life who have had to dance the beat of their own drum, which meant having to find a way to help their family understand they were going to go on their own path. You know, Chimamanda is an author. I get the impression her family was very supportive of that. But we know that many families don't be writing your spare time. Writing, writes in the nights, but go to get a proper job and bring money in.
Yeah.
Proper job.
But so I think we know that there are families that support. So I think that the challenge is, and the journey is, especially for many of us, 30s, 40s, 50s, how can we, and I don't ask me how, I'm not one you guys can answer that question, but it's like, how do we have to definitely show love, but recognize that ultimately, whatever choice we make with our lives, we are the ones who are going to pay that price. We are. And we have to be prepared to live with it. Live with the choice you have made. And recognize our children are watching us. And so when children see parents give up on their dreams, they don't even try.
I mean, I am so touched by what you said. I'm gonna stay on script. Jimi is yours, but I'm gonna double back something.
Yeah. I like what you said, Jimi, because I mean, you just took us on a journey, on a roller coaster journey. Very interesting. You talked about, people move at different paces, different rates, and that whole piece around being badly injured. I think for me, what helped was finding coaching. I think it taught me how to be kind to myself because I was injured, and to be less judgmental. So again, like you said, the different ways to recover. I wanted to just pick up on something that we started to talk about in the beginning, which is what you do, Jimi. I want us to make sure we have space for that. And we know you do Arise Bird. Why Arise Bird? Because we understand it was vanishing woman at some point. So what is the meaning? Why did you choose that name? And if you could just quickly also add a few thoughts around, that piece you talked about, I think passion, excellence. I think you talked about, because there's that thing about wanting to be perfect, and that creates its own set of trauma. But you also talked about finding your passion regardless. Yeah.
Okay. So, so I produced, so basically ending my story, or not ending. It's
victory lap. Yes.
Okay. So where I am now. So fast forward to where I am. So when at the recovery, I started to produce this documentary movie. And initially so it's called Arise Firebird, Women and BIPOC Professionals Transcending and Finding Joy at Work. And it tells the stories of 3 BIPOC and female professionals what they face in the workplace, how they were able to work through their trauma, and how they're rebuilding their careers and their lives, doing work that has meaning, makes money, has an impact, and their journey back. And the documentary was initially going to be something different. And I'd been working with an independent producer on this issue, but this just really began to bother me. Like, this is a story I really feel could be more impactful. And so I took a chance on the story. We had initially called it Vanishing Women because really that was the core idea. Like, where are all the women who graduated from university in the 80s and 90s that are supposed to be in the boardrooms now? Where do they go? Is there like a boardroom serial killer hunting them? Because they're not there, but they graduated. What happened to them? So that was the concept of Vanishing Women. Why the title shifted was because, as I began to make the movie, I realized that, none of us were vanishing from ourselves. We were choosing ourselves. We were elevating higher and doing amazing things. This was not a sad story. It's a tough story, but not a sad story. And the idea of Vanishing Women was telling the story from the perspective of, the perpetrator, a bit, the bullies, that's why they're leaving, or even allies. It was telling it from sort of allies and organizations, but not from the story of the people, the women, the BIPOC professionals. So in my standpoint, I haven't vanished from myself. I'm doing things I'd never imagined I'd ever do in my life. And, I've traveled to different countries on the back of this film. We've won awards. I've done a TED Talk. We've got a PBS national broadcast in the works. We headlined a conference a couple weeks ago, which is amazing. I'm talking to people I never thought I could ever talk to. And so I definitely feel like I'm flying higher. And what I just have to do is keep letting my light shine and keep shining as bright as I can. And that's the real thing we want anyone to take away from watching Arise Firebird is when in doubt, shine as bright as you can, shine even brighter. And that was the hope. So our hope with the film is not our hope. What we're doing with the movie, Coach Jay, is we're taking it into companies to do workshops with their women, BIPOC, and other underrepresented employees to create safe spaces. So they have a 6-month or 12-month program to really to remember who they are. To remember who they are in the content.
Like Black Panther. It's a Black Panther moment when she says, remember who you are. And that's what's awakening in me right now. And I'm actually feeling chills as you're having this conversation, because sometimes when we are so externally focused on what others are saying, I went into engineering because my guidance counselor said, you're good at math and science. Being good at something doesn't mean that you can get to mastery, because mastery requires some type of passion, some type of love, some type of joy. So having the courage to pivot and move toward that thing that brings you joy. I did that in 2019. I understand that. And I understand people sitting on the sideline. Are you a shell? Why are you leaving? All those things. So I can so empathize with what you're describing. And many of the women that I coach, they've like climbed this ladder, and they get to the top of the building and say, this isn't where I want it to be. So I applaud the way, the grace, giving people grace for the pace that they have run their own race, and creating, letting them know that there's unlimited love for them and mercy for them to follow their own hearts. What's the lady's name that plays on Insecure?
Issa Rae. Oh, no.
Issa Rae.
No, the Nigerian.
So Issa Rae is actually Senegalese. I don't know if y'all know that. She's actually Senegalese.
I said Issa Rae before you said Nigerian. That's why I didn't repeat myself.
But it's her friend. I'll pull up her name. But she goes through that whole Jollof and Jesus, and how, her parents wanted engineers and doctors and lawyers. And then here she comes being a comedian. And it's like, Mama, I made it. And sometimes you just have to have confidence in who you are. I'm loving that you're giving us a little extra time, Jimi. So I know we have about 30 more minutes of recording time. So we just want to explore just a little bit more, because I love that you've now explained that Vanishing Women was about where did they go. And on your journey, you then had this epiphany is that we're still here. We're just defining our own selves for ourselves and not allowing others to do it. So I really, really love that. Allow yourself to shine and fly as high as you could possibly do. One thing I wanted to just to bring in, and I think I'll share this clip. Yvonne Orji, that's her name, Yvonne Orji. And she does this thing with so Yvonne, she's an example of singing her, dancing to her own tune in spite of some of those expectations and pressures from Nigerian elders. And I believe some of that is shifting. Quite honestly, some of it is shifting, because people are seeing that degrees doesn't necessarily mean employability anymore. So how you make your money and how you make your life, we're becoming more brand centered, that it's about who we are, and that we show up best when we're working from a heart space. And taking the courageous step to be able to do that is the journey that we're inviting people to do more of. And we want to provide the support, role models, frameworks that, yes, we can all live a life that's aligned with our values, with our passions, and that thing that makes us excited to get up every morning. We may not be able to start that way, but powering through and suffering and being the long suffering, one of the things that I figured out, and I hope this isn't a stretch for anyone, but I always wondered why Nigerian mothers-in-law was so perilous and so mean. I got something for you, so I'm just going to throw out a theory. The Nigerian woman, and I'm not Nigerian, but I've lived in the environment for 20 years. What I've observed is, and you see it in America, you see it all over the world, where the woman long suffer. She's married, she's raising the kids, she's sacrificing who she is for so long, sacrificing for a husband, sacrificing for kids. Even in the workplace, she may be sacrificing. And when now that son that she invested so much money in is now married, right? She's like, it's my turn. I want to get mine now. And that's where you get, it's been, and that's just one personification. But when you bottled up dissatisfaction for so long, it's going to pop out somewhere. For some, it pops out blood pressure. Some, it pops out, like you said, diabetes and, physical ailments and mental ailments. Why bottle up your greatness?
So I think that's a bigger question for another day. And I think taking the mother-in-law thing aside, because I will one day have a mother-in-law. And so even though I haven't met you wherever you are, I think you're an amazing person. And I do not believe on this concept because you are going to be awesome. Yes. And to my own children as my own future daughter-in-law, son-in-laws. But I do think the question around, because I do want to answer Dr. J's question about excellence and passion. But there's a concept of codependency. So, and this is this may be a bit of a journey. I won't go. And it's a whole other conversation. But and I notice this with my own work. So my relationship with some parts of my work, somebody might describe it as being perhaps codependent, and that's where one possible definition. And I would, please, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists in particular, please comment on this. It's where we make those kind of choices. We make our life, our identity contingent upon someone else's, and sometimes it manifests as entitlement. And this is not just I'm speaking just in general, not about any particular person, family member. And so if I sacrifice this for you, you now owe me something. I, as a sister, I had to, maybe as a sibling, had to do more of the chores so that, the other sibling who was struggling academically could pass and graduate. And then when it came down to her time, they were not prepared to return the favor. And that entire, I did it for you, you should do it for me. Well, no, that's kind of codependent. And I say this because codependency in itself is a whole, it can destroy someone's entire life and mind. It really can. And expecting someone to pay you back, I've learned, I don't expect anyone to pay me back for anything I've done. I don't expect them to spit in my face, but I'm not that surprised if people do that. I'll be honest. A part of the pain I had was expecting people to treat me a certain way because I did something for them, or did certain things a certain way. So I do think that's probably a big issue, because we think we go into a workplace, we pay our dues, and then we are due something at the end. That's not how the workplace works. Which goes back to trying to segue back to Dr. J's question about excellence and passion. If you're doing something you're enjoying, and it can be with an employer. Some people love to be secretaries, VAs. Some people love to be bank marketers. I mean, it's not perfect. And as an entrepreneur, I can tell you it's not perfect here either. You're trading something for something else. But if you fundamentally like the marketing work you're doing or the bank operations, if the promotion doesn't come, you can keep doing that work because that's what you enjoy doing, opposed to doing something that really is soul destroying. But you hope in 2 or 3 years you get past it, and it may not come, because that may not be your path. And it doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just may not be the route. I think about people who So you may think that, I think, yeah, getting past that any job is beneath you. So I think this issue about finding out what that is, it's a journey I am still on. So I'll give an example. With this film, people have been asking us to come in and do some work in companies with the movie. And a question I have to answer is, what does it actually mean in terms of what I can do well? What would I enjoy doing? And what would the client really, really benefit from? What would be a transformative experience for them? And it's those things I have to try to figure out. And it's new. So exploring that journey in myself. Otherwise, it could be a situation where I do what everyone says I should do, and I can't sustain that, and I won't like doing it. So the discovering oneself doesn't necessarily mean quitting and doing what Jimi did, make a film. Although you could, it could still be within your employer. It could, your passion and your joy, maybe I want a job that I can just do, and my focus is on my ministry or my nonprofit work or on whatever else I want to focus on.
Victoria, let me just jump in real quick, because one of the things I like that you're saying is, it takes me back to that piece on how would my life and career be different if I accepted that God was my employer? Because you keep talking about the fact that we're at different stages, we're in different journeys, and our recovery rate is different, and our path definitely is different. I mean, being that thoughtful about a job that has a financial reward and actually asking all these questions is really powerful, Jimi. Really, really powerful. Thank you. Katrina, you wanted to speak? And I think I'm going to be a doctor soon, because I'm coach. So maybe that's a calling.
Receive it, Coach J. Receive it. I love it.
Dr. J.
Yes, Dr. J. I heard a quote yesterday, and I'm feeling a need to share it. And this is about setting boundaries, because I think some of what we're talking about here is being willing to set boundaries that work well for you. And the statement really is that saying no to something is not a rejection. It's a protection. No is not rejection, it's protection. Because guess what? If I say no to the thing that's really not for me, I can say yes intentionally to those things that really, really work for me. So when you describe that, making a choice that maybe I'm saying in the job is not that dream job, and this is what I did for a couple of years, but I volunteered for something within my workplace that did make my heart sing. And after a while, I was able to reposition my career to do more of the singing, but I was able to get valuable experience in the volunteer while I was in the other job. So like when I came to Nigeria, I had done diversity. I'd done, mentoring and coaching and all of those things in a setting as an engineering and manufacturing systems manager. The things I'd done as hobbies were now at the center. So when you're talking about grace for your own race and for your own pace of transition, I can give that testimony, because there were times when I said, why am I still building motorcycles when my heart is saying build people? My company was a wonderful environment, because choosing your environment makes a big deal. And I just want to make that point right now to say that if a seed is put in dry soil, this can be the same seed, but you're going to have a different result based on the environment. So I just love that you're bringing all of those pieces together. Now, we do just want to have a little fun with you right now, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and we want our soulmates to learn more about Jimi, heroic, victorious Jimi, the Arise Firebird. So here's some questions for you, quick ones.
All right. So what's the best book you've read recently, Jimi? Rapid fire.
I need to come back to that one. I do have one.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
What type? Any type?
Chai latte mixed in with a generic black tea with Cream, frothy, one bit of sugar.
Cool.
I love it.
Yeah. What's your go-to productivity hack, Jimmy?
Sleeping,
Mm.
and then swearing profusely.
Whoa. Break it down. Break it down.
Profanity and sleep in some combination boosts productivity.
Okay. I've never heard that one before. I'll probably go up
I
to the
love
record. What's your favorite hobby outside of work, Jimmy?
I've already said sleeping. Singing. I sing and I play the piano.
Ah, nice. Okay, so let's go back to the best book you've read recently. We had just 4.
Range by David Epstein. An incredible book. Changed so much.
Tell us why.
Watch his TED Talk, but he talks about how late bloomers have the advantage, why generalists succeed over specialists. And for me, what I took away from that is, nothing I've gone through has been wasted. Everything I've done in my career, even though I'm now a film director and producer, everything to this point has been valuable, and I can utilize that, and I get to utilize that consciously or unconsciously or subconsciously. So it gives starting a career starting again in my 40s. That was a great book to read in terms of knowing that it in many ways gives me an advantage.
Yeah, no experience is wasted for sure. All right. So I think at this point in time, Jimmy, I would love for you to just help us wrap up by saying just one final thing for our soulmates. What is the one message or one soundbite you want them to remember?
All right. So if we can I'm going to ask everyone to just close your eyes and put your hands on your chest until you can feel the warmth of your hands on your chest. And then just listen to my voice. You are able. You are worthy. You are capable. You are excellent at what you do. You are more than what you do. You are more than what you know. Your presence is a gift to the workplace. Your presence is a gift to the world. You are worthy beyond measure. You are worthy beyond description. Your source is the most divine. Who would you be if you remember who you are? How would it feel to know there is nothing wrong with you? And what would you do if you allowed yourself to shine as bright as you could? Arise, Firebird. All right.
That was fantastic. I could feel the warmth. Thank you, Jimmy. Katrina is flying away already. It's blown.
Oh, you
all right.
So much permission. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So thank you, soulmates, for joining us in another insightful episode of Peppersoup for the Soul. Today we delve deep into the nuances of workplace trauma with our special guest Jimi, uncovering its subtle signs, its impacts on individuals and teams, and strategies to foster a healthy work environment. Katrina?
We've explored the Arise Bird journey with you, Jimmy. Understanding now the significance of the name, to fly high and be unlimited and shine, shine, shine. And I guess I'm understanding so much better the Vanishing Women, how you made that transition, because it really went from victimy, really, to victory. And it's a powerful testament to resilience and transformation. It's helped us to distinguish just workplace stress and actual trauma, cumulative trauma that can lead to so many different symptoms. emphasizing the importance of creating a learning environment over perfection-focused one. We've talked about the culture of Nigeria. We've talked about the culture in the West. We've talked about being in technical spaces and leadership roles, and like coffee being too black, too strong. All of those things that play a role. So I think after all, growth happens when we embrace the journey of trying, failing, and learning. Thank you for giving permission to all of us to tap into what's special about us. Thank you so much. Like I said, I've had chills as I've listened. I was familiar with your work before, and now you've just taken us to the next level. I hope our soulmates are able to see themselves, or either see their friends, or maybe even build just a consciousness to support some of their friends or sisters or cousins that might be going through a similar journey, and maybe all they knew to do was to say push harder, work harder, push, force. But force is never as effective as ease and flow. So finding yourself and flowing into what God is drawing you to, so powerful. So Jay, it's on you.
Yeah, I love the piece where Jimi said, God is on my side, on my side. And, I think we're all women of faith. So this was such a powerful experience for me, just hearing your story, Jimi. Thank you so much for sharing, for being so open and so vulnerable, for trusting us with your story. Thank you so much. So as we wrap up, let's remember to reframe adversity into advantage. When life gives you peppers, let's make peppersoup. So if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and connect with us on social media. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, soulmates, stay inspired, keep growing, and turn life's pepper into a flavorful soup.
This is Peppersoup for the Soul signing off. Take care of your soul, and may your peppersoup always be rich and satisfying. Bye for now. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, share with a friend, leave a review, and connect with us on social media. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, soulmates, stay inspired, keep growing, and turn life's peppers into a flavorful soup. Connect below. Bye-bye for now.